Okay, so for my next blog, I'm going to be talking about Star City. This was a project I was brought on to a couple of months ago, right at the start, in order to generate some game loop ideas and design ideas. It's been an idea which has been kicking around for a couple of years, a collaboration between a playwright, Dan, and Imre, a established games developer based in London. I'd come to know Imre because of my puzzle design work working on Family and Rivals, and I think he very much wanted something in the same vein, perhaps using some of the same frameworks and ideas that I'd developed, but it was within this idea of a game about the cosmonaut space training program. So I did a lot of early design work for this, which I'll include in my links. And design docs, and put together the basic gameplay loop. The whole project is still very much kind of in the works. It's non-NDA'd, but it's pre-publisher and pre-demo, and to my mind, we'll just have to see what happens with this. It's very funding dependent, as is all these things. But what I'm going to do is talk through the pitch doc a little bit, explain some of the ideas and how I came to certain design ideas and what was going for. So Star City, a narrative-driven detective adventure exploring the darkest and brightest moments of the space race. We can see some communist space propaganda over here. This is part of the art style. And it's playing on the idea that the cosmonaut space program, unlike the US space program, is not widely talked about. So it's a way to explore stories through absorbing gameplay and innovative puzzles. The original theatre production ran in London. It was a short run. It was a one-woman play. And it basically told the story of a young radio technician called Polina Semyonova, who was in the heart of the Russian space program. She is fictionalized, and she has relationships with various people and lots of stuff. I haven't actually seen it. I've seen the recording of the play when it was being rehearsed. So how to take that and turn it into a game? Well, when I was first thinking about this, I was thinking about how to make the player feel involved. Now, what this kind of ties in with is something I have alluded to before, which is, although I am very interested in narrative, I often find narrative games extremely underwhelming in the way that they deliver narrative. And the reason why is because they often, I feel, breed a certain degree of passivity. So let's say we take a game where there's some dialogue choices. So you're speaking to someone, you have some dialogue choices, and you click through, perhaps using something like the Ink Engine, you click through stuff, and you experience various things, and you make various choices, quote unquote, which may or may not affect the ending. To me, that's a really very dull and uninvolving way. I rarely care, and I rarely care about the reading experience on screen quite in that way. To me, being actively involved in story choices like that actually doesn't necessarily make for a very compelling story. What it really creates is a kind of relativism around the story, the idea that this could go all sorts of ways and they all matter just as much as each other, which really to me kind of jars as someone who, reads a lot of writing and watches, shows and movies which have a very strong sense of where they're going. And I find often there's a kind of diluting quality to choose your own venture. So I didn't want to do it like that. What I thought could be interesting is that Polina might have, in later years, defected to America. And she was being asked to write down her experiences at Star City. And she had to basically put the major events into a timetable and also collate a document with the key people in that. And the way she would do that is go back in 6 episodes, go back through her memories into this world, a 2D rendered world, where she could explore it, solve puzzles, but in order to progress, collate these reports. So that's all in here. I'll leave it up just a second if you want to pause it and read it. What makes it different? Well, we've kind of talked about that. It's accessible because of its point and click, but it's going to have some modern puzzle stylings and it'll appeal to a global market. The art style, which I particularly wanted, is, I thought what would particularly work was this kind of Kunstler and Degas style 2D. The others propped in more of the brutalism and space propaganda, but I still think that the kind of inferred perspective, Kunstler and Degas Catch Me If You Can style is a good one for this, with a kind of color switch between America and Russia. And these are just some of my previous interfaces. I kind of adapted an interface as well to make it look like this. So what we see on the left here is the idea of Polina. You know, these are things that you could fill in. So you'd have these dates all the way down, and you'd have to fill them in. And when you say you got 5, it would let you know. Now, these available solutions wouldn't actually be all available right at the start. They'd actually appear as and when you kind of found things. So let's say you go to the archives and you find something about a failed rocket explosion. Suddenly, you know, rocket explodes becomes an option over here. So you actually have to explore the world in order to discover possible solutions, which you can then slot into here, get 5, and it moves on. A lot of people call these Obra-likes. I've made a few before, Rivals over here, and of course Family. And I was thinking about the personas, very much puzzle games, people who like narrative games, and people who like point and click. So this is slow games. This is like games for intelligent, slow thinking. Team and its funding aims, etc., etc., etc. So this is still in development. I think it's an interesting game. It's going to sit somewhere between Oxenfree, Kentucky Route Zero, Return of the Obra Dinn, but in 2D, and of course my games as well. I think the trick to making it compelling will have to be to give a certain amount of physical exploration as well as the kind of UI-based folder stuff. There also needs to be really nice art style, but mostly I do feel like there needs to be a strong sense of narrative, even though the way it's going to be discovered to some respects will be disordered because she's going to be finding out about different stuff. So, for instance, you might find about something which happened in 1959, but only find out about it in 1965. So you can mix up the story and tell it out of order. But if you do it in an interesting way, this can actually still produce a very compelling story. And we can see that obviously with games like Obra Dinn and hopefully, frankly, my games as well. So Star City is something that I wanted to kind of push some of the frameworks that I've expanded on and take them into a bigger game. It remains to be seen if it'll happen. I'm not certain there's a very strong elevator pitch for it, and narrative games don't tend to sell a bundle, so, you know, here's seeing if publishers will jump on it. There also isn't a demo as well. So there's a long way to go with this one, but I think it's an interesting idea, and I hope you've got something out of some of the design decisions that I've made here.